3, 2.
Well, good evening. It is Monday, March 23rd, 2026, and I would like to call this work session of the Tipp City Board of Education to order at 5 o'clock p.m. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Stevens, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. McMurray,
Here.
Mrs. Dillard,
Here.
Mrs. Ernst,
Here.
Mrs. Blyman,
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. All present accounted for. We can continue the meeting.
Excellent. First on tasks for this evening, I need a motion for approval of the agenda for tonight's work session.
I motion that we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Dillard.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Blyman. Any discussion regarding the agenda for the work session? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Stevens, can you call the vote, please?
Dillard,
Yes.
Blyman,
Yes.
Ernst,
Yes.
McMurray,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion passes. First on the agenda discussion items, the TIS position. Mr. Moran, I will yield the floor to you.
So this is the Technology Integration Specialist position that we spoke about last month, and then I shared documents with you right after that with salary schedule proposal and the position job description. Just want to make sure everybody had a chance to look it over and see what questions you might have on this before the voting happens at the regular agenda item in the regular session.
So we'll open it for questions and discussion.
I thought it was a very comprehensive job description, kind of touched everything that seems like you want to get out of this position. Not any questions.
Thomas and Dawn worked together and her group, including Michelle with EMIS, to make sure that this position is going to meet the needs now and for the future.
Some of the job descriptions seems like they're more system level responsibility versus just, especially like staff training being involved in things like that. And so I was looking at jobs that kind of had similar qualifications or similar roles and responsibilities, and the qualification for only needing a 2-year, I think, arts degree. Can you explain that rationale?
An associate's degree is the qualification. This is really a power school focus and the integration of all the technology in power school to utilize it to its fullest. So the group felt like this was a good spot to get somebody in here at that level. Having somebody with a computer science bachelor's degree was not something that was needed, but then if somebody can also understand the system and work with teachers and work with everyone to, again, utilize it to its fullest extent would be the most beneficial.
How soon do you want to have somebody in place?
We'd like to post it once it's approved, whether it's this month, next month, whenever it gets approved. If it gets approved, then we would post it, and we would like to have a little bit of carryover during the summer if possible, just as Deb Baker, as you can see her resignations on the regular agenda, can help with that and also work with Michelle Bell and EMIS prior to the start of the school year. So it's really going to depend on that person, making sure we have a quality person to take those roles.
I think it would be really necessary to have this person in place prior to the summer in light of all the documentation for EMIS. So.
And then I support strengthening all of the technology systems, but I want to make sure, I was reading through, there doesn't seem to be clear boundaries since this role supports as primary administrator for student information systems and support website content. I want to make sure there's a clear delineation that this position is not designed to act as a gatekeeper for access to any of that information that would fall under public records, so that they would not be the direct access point and the person acting as a gatekeeper. So, thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, since they're going to be managing all of the web content and things like that, front-facing some of the, I can pull up where it talks about, let me find on point 4, website administration, assisting in managing, updating the district school websites, ensure current, accurate, accessible information. That could also include things that might fall under FOIA requests, and since they're going to kind of be a consolidated position where everything kind of bottlenecks, I just want to make sure that this is not going to be the person that people are directed to pull up those records and to provide them. Is that correct?
There's no change in records request. That still goes to Dave Stevens, our treasurer. Nothing's changed in
Okay.
that.
Okay.
It's with regards to website administration, it's assisting and collaborating with communications to make that happen, to deal with the website. They'll just be, again, there's pieces of Power School that goes into their messaging system, all those things that could go into our website. So it's all, again, integrated in that, but they're not responsible for records request. That goes to the treasurer's office.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And who would be this person's supervisor?
It'd be Dawn and Director of Teaching, Learning, and Curriculum, or excuse me, Technology.
And it is not an administrative
Correct.
Clerical position. It is simply
It's a classified position.
classified. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Mr. Moran? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to the next item on the agenda is board policy review. And before I turn the floor over to those that are representing us looking at the board policies, I just wanted to make a note in public comment. We have the AI policy and the food service policy that is reflective of House Bill 10 and the requirements of such. And I think the biggest thing that I would ask is there are a lot that are going to be there with the first read in the regular board agenda tonight. Please read each one thoroughly and let Mr. Moran know if you have questions or clarifications. The great thing about it is in the document, it's red for where the changes need to be occurred and strike through, and green will represent new or adjusted information. And I know the artificial intelligence one is not set in stone. There's still some things that need to be worked out, and so I just wanted to make everyone aware that that's a work in progress. And now I will yield the floor to Mr. Moran and those that are working on the policies.
So Neola met with us, Ms. Splyman, Ms. Dillard, and myself a couple times to go over the updated policies from the winter update. These are a couple that, or excuse me, the artificial intelligence was one that we never really got to and finalized, so that's why it's here. It's a lot, and I'm gonna address that second. The food service was a special March edition that came out, and as you can see, this one is on the first reading because it's pretty simple. It adds what's in green if you click on it, and this is where it talks about protein food products or food misbranded as meat or egg products. It's just making sure things are done correctly in there. You can't misbrand stuff. That would be against the law, and this corresponds to the House Bill 10. So again, it kind of goes through here, the exact stuff, identifying meat terms. Again, just some common names that they would associate with meat product has to be that. It can't be lab grown or some things like that. That is not a meat product. So just, again, specifying some things to go along with House Bill 10. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and then see if there's any questions on that before the first reading. Okay, yeah, it's something we gotta do. The other one, though, is the AI policy, and again, this one is not part of first reading. This is just the dialogue. I have, I'm gonna hand out some stuff to everybody here. There's a packet for you. So this AI use expectations has student and staff on it. This is the one, this is what I had sent everybody about a month ago as well. However, Dawn has made it look a whole lot nicer and easier to read and look at. And I think this is really what, to me, we should be focusing on and looking at when we talk about AI use and expectations, that this is a students or, human-centric process. We are not here to remove student thinking, we're here to enhance student thinking. And these are tools that can be used as it, and that's kind of where this acceptable use comes in, when it is, when it isn't. And I really think that mullet test, that piece, is it helpful to make me think, or is it replacing the thinking for me? If kids can walk through that process, that's gonna help them, give them a better understanding of when it's used and when it's not used. And again, at the very top, the important piece, the very first slide is AI tools can be used explicitly when it's explicitly permitted by the teacher for a certain piece. If not, it's not part of it. So I know this is the first time you've seen this looking nice, but is there any concerns when we look at that, human-centric, making sure that thinking is still part of the students, that we want to then, something different than we want to consider with the policy? Because I think having that shared understanding where we're looking at, and the same thing with the staff side, again, it's looking at that, how do we help kids, how do we use it to be more efficient, not to replace anyone?
I'm trying to remember back, I don't have my notes with me right now, Aaron. Help me remember, this document is what's going to be in the student handbooks?
Well, we talked about maybe putting some of those things in the student handbook, and again, I think,
Will this be included also in the policy itself, or
I
will
don't,
this be?
I think
in
this
the
is just a
handbook?
shared understanding that we have come up with. This is
Okay.
a document for that. You have what I've went through, and kind of with this in mind, how it might look with this. And again, I'm not asking you to do this now. I want you to take this home with this information, and we could come back and have that discussion. But really, when we look at AI, where do we see, the importance for AI for students and for staff? And I guess that's my question. So we have a shared understanding when we're looking at these policies, because again, eventually I'd like you to look at the policies, and then the legislative group the policy group can get back together and make some suggestions, recommendations to the whole board.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yeah, so I think one area that I'd like to make sure that we have a discussion about, or that, and I admittedly, I think this is difficult to capture in a policy, is when we introduce these digital tools, whether it's AI or a similar related digital tool, it changes the way the work is done. So for a teacher, as a student is entering math into a system, with Khan now, there's a box and they enter it, and the teacher doesn't get an opportunity to see that student's work. So they don't know areas necessarily in the way that they would if the student were handed a piece of paper and they get that piece of paper back and they can see the work worked out. So what I'd like to make sure is that as we're talking about these tools and as we're introducing what I think are very good stakeholder engagement, is that is a really important part of it too, is that we understand how the work is changing, and that we make sure that we purchase tools and we give students and teachers access to tools that they might change the work, but we're going to change them in deliberate ways, and we're going to stop if we feel like there's a point at which the district is getting into tools that are inhibiting their ability to see student work or understand how the work is done in really meaningful ways.
So I think that is really important to me. The second thing that is important to me is that, you know, we have a lot of tools that could be at kids' disposal. And so when I was a child and I had an assignment, I had a piece of paper and I turned it in. You know, the teacher gave it to me and then I worked on it and then I turned it in. But I think there are many, many different ways that we're asking students to turn in work these days. There are all these different platforms. And so we want to take advantage of these opportunities to use this type, but we also want to make sure that we are supporting kids in turning the work in and using these tools in good ways. And so it's about having a tool and using it as a tool, and also not burdening kids with a layer of executive functioning that they have not the ability to do yet. So those are concerns. Again, I think those are difficult to write into policy, but I think those are some of the issues in the lens through which I'm seeing this. And I think having a policy is great as we move forward. I think this could be one of the most important policies that we implement, at least other than the buildings that are being constructed, some of the most important things we do on my time.
Absolutely.
So really, again, making sure that the kids are demonstrating their knowledge and their work so it can be corrected or rewarded or applauded to move on, because
Right.
it's not just, well, they got it right, but I don't understand how they got it.
Right.
That's what
Right.
kids are doing with AI now. They
Right.
get an answer, they don't know how to get the answer.
Right.
So
That's-
how do we make sure they demonstrate the work so we know they have the knowledge?
Exactly. And we're also, I mean, I think one of the really nice things about some of these AI tools is it can provide feedback when the teacher isn't there. And so there are probably going to be choices between vendors where you have one vendor, they're doing very similar things. One might be cheaper, but if this provides better feedback to the teacher about student performance, then this other one is clearly a better tool for the district.
Absolutely.
So, I'd like to have that it should be, I think it should be a discriminator in purchasing. And I would like to write it into the policy so that we're making sure that that is another thing that's being taken into account when the stakeholders are meeting to establish what the requirement is for new services that they want to bring in.
I always look at this through the workforce lens, and this is invading everything, every workforce that exists out there. And I think that one of the important things that I would like to continue regardless of what the policy is, but I would really love for some of our business advisory committee groups to maybe take eyes on just this best practices. Is this how you are using this in your workplace? Is this enough? Is this appropriate? And definitely coming back, I think this is one of those policies that we're gonna have to come back and look at every year, 2 years, because I think it's gonna continue to change that quickly. And so bottom line is, I agree with Mrs. Ernst. I think that we have to make sure that students are still understanding the fundamentals, but they have to understand that AI is purposeful and how to use it correctly. More than that, I think that it's an opportunity for education, administration to be a little fearful of it, because it is you don't know what you don't know, and with what the kids might be learning. And so I think as long as we have appropriate professional development, communication, I'm trying to say the right words without punishment for using it inappropriately. I think those, things, I think being consistent across the board, whereas if one teacher says you can use it for your homework or you can use it to get started, and another teacher says, no, don't use it. I think that we have to make sure that there is efficient and proficient communication across the classrooms, and consistent, so that the kids aren't confused as to, oh my gosh, am I allowed to use this? Am I not allowed to use this? Is this, am I gonna get in trouble if I use it? I use Chat GPT 100 times a day. I use Grant GPT to write grants. And so I think that it is not a tool that replaces thinking. It's a tool that helps enhance it, and I think we just need to make sure that everybody is on the same page with it. That's my biggest thing and I love the Smolik test that's here, but I also think that consistency across the board, it's just like the cell phone policy. Once you set it, it's got to stay consistent. Doesn't matter whose classroom you are in. So.
I will say, I brought up last time, I keep hearing of not replacing thinking, and my concern is, especially while I read through all study after study after study of increased screen time, is denigrating children's ability to think. And so I would like to see some thoughtfulness in the policy as far as monitoring and keeping track of that. That way, if we do start to see a decline in either testing or how they are participating in the classroom based on that, I would like to see some reflection of that in how we're monitoring.
So kind of what I heard from some guardrails for students, usage of it.
Well, guardrails, but also really just, and I'm not quite sure, this would kind of be up to you and staff to find out, but just maybe benchmarks of a little bit more monitoring, not just putting guardrails on and then hoping that there's not kids that are falling off because of that, but maybe just every once in a while doing some sort of testing to figure that out.
Okay. We'll probably talk more about that in our policy.
That'll give me more time to really flesh that out too.
And again, I think our local businesses, especially those in any kind of manufacturing or digitizing of whatever it might be. I mean, it can be, I've seen AI being used now in fast food. So there's not a human being that's taking your order. It is automated. So I think that asking them what their expectations are of their employees right now, what they think they're going to be in a year or 2 years, I think that's appropriate. 5 years from now, I have no idea. But I think letting them at least maybe take a look at it and give some input, I think could be really valuable as far as if we are preparing students for the workforce in which they will all be using this. It doesn't matter what industry they go into. They will all be using AI.
I have a couple of thoughts. I agree with, I think, everything everybody here has said. I don't think there's anything more important than the point that you brought up in the selection of the vendor. Because in the same way that you must interview an employee that you're bringing in, a superintendent, a treasurer, whoever, I think you have to use the same sort of idea and mentality when you're selecting the vendor that you're going to be using for your artificial intelligence, because those artificial intelligences are programmed by somebody. And so we need to have a really good idea of who that company is, what their values are, what their primary goals would be in programming the artificial intelligence. Is it categorically and specifically for educational purposes, or does it have applications outside of that? I think that is, in my assessment, probably the most important thing when it comes to this, because in a lot of ways, and I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but in a lot of ways, yes, we have to have a policy, but it's like trying to throw a lasso around a tsunami. None of us know what's going to happen with this technology. We're doing our best to try and pin the tail on the donkey, but at the end of the day, this thing is evolving so rapidly, and technology is changing so quickly, sometimes by the month, that what we come up with now might be completely irrelevant in 3 months. So I'm not saying that it's an exercise in futility at all. I think we need this. We have to have a starting point. But what I am saying is maybe reinforcing Angie's point, where this is going to have to be reviewed way more than any other policy we've ever come up with. If it's every 6 months even, I don't know. But all I know is this is probably the biggest unknown in the world right now. There's lots of people who think they know. There's some people, very few, who probably do know.
the impacts that they're going to have, and they probably have a CEO in front of their name. But I think that the vendor selection is probably the most important thing that we have. In the same way that we would interview somebody coming in to do a job, I think we have to interview the vendor, essentially interview, quote unquote. We have to be very selective, and we need to know a lot about the company. We need to know a lot about, I'll leave it at that.
It's
That's-
the one variable we can control.
It's the one
right
variable,
now.
yeah, we can control that, and also we can make a big mistake, or we can get it really right with that one choice. And I think everything else is gonna kind of fall into place based on that. But I do think that, it's the best analogy that I can think of. It's like, we're trying to throw a rope around a tsunami wave and ride it. And it's kind of like, how do you get your arms around something that's so unknown and so rapidly changing, so.
So from a policy perspective, it sounds like we've got this section that's on procurement and evaluation of AI tools. It sounds like if there's an opportunity to have a reevaluation at some set amount of time, and also an evaluation of the existing tools. So existing tools, I know we call out generative AI, and then further on down, we call out natural language processing, large language models,
Right.
and we also have machine learning. Well, I would guess we have some machine learning that is already in our existing tool sets.
Absolutely.
And so even if it's not generative AI, it is machine learning that has been trained on an existing data set. And so I think there might be from a policy perspective, a desire to have a reevaluation periodically to see, is this still working the way that we hope it worked? Has it changed hands as a company? Did it go from a nonprofit, now it's a for-profit tool? To have an opportunity to evaluate and decide if the district wants to continue with that.
I think along with that, I think it's a great point. I think along with that is the idea of, we're going to be in a catch-22, I think, with some of these, because some of these companies, they realize and they know how quickly things are changing, and so they're going to want you to sign a long-term contract with them. And I would be interested in finding one that doesn't require us to sign a long-term contract. If you could go a year to 2 years at most, again, given the fluidity of the technology in the market. I mean, if we got into a 5-year contract and a year into it, we decided it was the wrong vendor, I mean, that could be disastrous in terms of how they're programming their AI. So I think that maybe somewhere as a provision in the policy, maybe it's attached to sort of the review that you're talking about, or maybe it's a separate section that we try and work in there where the priority is on sourcing companies that can provide us a variety of contract lengths, so that we don't run into somebody that says, all we do is 5-year contracts and that's it. I can see that being a real problem for us, just with the speed and the change, so.
Well, data and privacy is going to be a big piece, obviously,
Yeah.
and that needs to be the forefront to comply with state laws right now. And there's some out there that do that well, better than others, and some that are maybe not involved in that. So you really have to get into that piece. I would say, Google Gemini is one that they're already in schools. They know about the data privacy, so there's a lot of stuff like their LLMs are not trained on student stuff that gets put into there, so they don't have that. They can't access it. They can't read it. Those types of things. So there's certain ones out there that we would have to vet to make sure just data use and data privacy, plus the biases and all those other things would have to be checked into as well and validated.
Cindy, sorry, Mrs. Dillard.
That's all right. So I actually went to a training at the OSBA conference, and they talked about Gemini so it'll definitely be a program that we look into. But the one thing I really wanted to point out is that this is all new territory. This is fluid. This is going to keep changing, and this is such a great beginning in terms of your staff and your students having these expectations, this vocabulary, a dictionary, so to speak. Getting everybody on the same page is key. And for me, besides the vendor, the most important part is teacher training, because the teachers are supposed to be the experts, even though we know our students often are smarter than the teachers when it comes to some new technology, right? I mean, I go and ask my son all the time about things. But I think that a very specific and explicit plan of professional development and recurring professional development, occurring for new employees as well. Just making sure that teachers are on the same page about this and feel confident, because it isn't going to be, if a teacher doesn't feel confident in something that they're given, they aren't going to utilize it well. And the importance of sharing among teachers themselves, sharing knowledge, being able to share and problem solve is critical also. So to me, that's the second big piece of all this, is ongoing training and keeping ahead of this, because basically we're building the plane while we fly it. Right?
Into the tsunami.
Yeah. Yes.
Got the rope.
So kudos for this hard work. It's a great beginning and clearly outlines expectation and language that all of us need to become familiar with. And I'm going to take a class.
Cindy, to your point, and I guess to the board at large, is there any value, and has it already happened? Is there any value in communicating with current teachers and administrators about all the different ways they're seeing it being used currently in classrooms, the ways that it's not only being utilized but manipulated?
A survey?
Yeah, sort of a survey on what are you seeing right now as the state of the technology exists today? What are things that would be useful to include in this policy that you have concerns about as the people that are boots on the ground in the classroom every day, you know, sort of encountering that? How are you using that as a teacher already? How are your students, whether or not, are they admitting that they're using it? If they are, what are the ways in which they're admitting it? I think that it would be useful from that perspective to be able to maybe gain some insight into things that we could put into this policy and the expectations, you know, this expectation document.
So Dawn's already brought this to the technology coaches, so there's one or two in each building, so they're going through this as well and
Great.
having discussions about that. So I think those are all part of it, and then there is a bigger piece though about teaching kids and teaching staff. Again, to Cindy's point, they have to be comfortable doing it. Well, having it separated, I think this is where we realized I don't think we did a very good job of using technology when computers came out. We said, give that to the tech teacher.
Yep.
They'll teach the kid to do tech, but the teachers didn't have to necessarily get involved in it. And we need to make sure all the teachers are providing some guidance to kids because they have knowledge and skills to share. Cindy also brought a point, you know, many times other people, the young are very technology savvy. They know how to use it. And I think it's Stephen Hawking's, but they don't have the wisdom to use it correctly. And that's where the adults, that's where the teachers need to come in. Having that wisdom, when to use it, when not to use it, how to use it appropriately. That's the merging of those two things.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe the third leg of that is getting the right technology. So ChatGPT, it can give you a new paragraph. Or it would be great if it would take your paragraph and say, this part here is kind of weak, like a teacher would. So if we had tools that could do, if we had a requirement for tools that provided that, it might help as well.
And that's really, I think, what you're talking about, to me, it sounds like the prompting piece, right? It's asking the questions to get the answers you want. You're not asking it to do the work for you. You're asking to get feedback on stuff. But how do you do that? You got to prompt it in the right way. You got to ask for it in the right way. That's a big piece. The ethics and prompting are really some of the basic pieces that need to be taught. When is it 6th, 7th grade? Is it 7th, 8th grade? Those things need to really start.
Way earlier.
Well,
Can be
it depends. Yeah, when do we open it up? I guess. And I think there's a piece of it that, I don't know, there's some cyber safety that needs to go before that.
Yeah.
Where does that get put into, and then build on that? So that's something that we are working on and looking to come up with something relatively soon, working with AI and where does that cyber safety, where does all that come into play? Because I think we have to have an understanding before we unleash something on that. Then we need the prompting, the ethics piece. I don't, I think it's not that kids in 4th grade can't understand ethics, but I think the ethics that you're talking about, in junior high and high school are a lot different than you do when you talk about them at the 4th grade level.
I think this district, when my kids went through, they had a great digital safety program. Admittedly, my kids are a little bit older now, but it was in 4th and 5th grade, it was a great program. So I think the district has a great program to build on for this topic.
Ms. Plyman?
I was just going to get to clarify the TIS because Ms. Dillard, you had mentioned instructing staff, and I'm assuming part 3 of that, where this new position is to instruct staff, I'm assuming there's going to be some overlap with the AI tools and what they're teaching, or is that not what that's designed for?
It depends what teachers are bringing to them.
Okay.
They may be help integrated into the classroom. Again, depending on where it comes from, yeah, that could definitely be a piece of it.
Okay. And then I would say for AI, for me at least, just a concern for kids, because I know adults deal with this, is AI will prompt you things and it'll give you multiple branches that you can go out to, and it's really easy to go down different rabbit holes and to lose track of where you were actually originally thinking. So I think that's another component to really be aware of as well.
My final note is we have kindergartners and preschoolers with these. As long as they have this, they need to be aware of this. It's going to get younger and younger and younger. If you say Siri, now everybody's phone's going to turn on. That's AI. And kids need to understand that tool. And at the same time, I think once we have this temporarily in place, I think that we need to make sure we're educating parents as well. Because if a kindergartner comes home and has a homework assignment or something, and you're a rushed parent trying to get dinner on and juggle other kids and out the door for sports and whatnot, it's really tempting for you to say, I don't know, let me check that math. I'm just saying, it exists. And so I think that there's definitely education for.
You're sitting at my dinner table?
I was going to say, not that it happens.
That's what I have to do with my 4th grader right now. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we need to help our educators feel confident, help our students feel confident, but I also think help our parents feel confident because they're a part of this as well. And so I think just keeping that in mind as this is going to continue to change as rapidly as it is, making sure everybody's on the same page. So. Thank you for this.
So I guess
to
to
start.
wrap up, if you could review those, if you have thoughts, if you could share those with Cindy, Ms. Plyman, Ms. Dillard, and myself, so we can put a meeting on the books so we can go over this and make some recommendations to the board. That'd be appreciated.
Do you know about when you're going to meet?
I took notes, tried to capture what everybody said, but if you could email me,
Yeah.
that would be helpful so that I make sure I didn't miss anything.
I have one administrative question. So there are options, end of option, internal option. Are we at this point, do we have a draft one that includes some of these options?
You
but
have
doesn't
that
include others?
with the handout, all the
Okay.
paper I gave you
Okay.
has a strike through one on the ones,
Okay.
the stuff it's just a draft to look at. It's not
Okay.
Neola's, it's not Neola's green and red. This is just me going through it, looking at what the guidelines that came up with and how that might match this. So it's
Okay.
a starting point.
Thank you.
And Norm will let us know what he thinks.
Okay. Great.
Anything else before we move on? I don't want to shortchange anyone.
Yeah, that's good.
Good discussion.
Yeah. The last thing that we have on the agenda this evening is administrative salary schedules, and I will yield the floor to Mr. Moran for discussion.
So I'm just gonna give you a handout real quick.
Thank you.
So tonight, we're just going to talk about establishing a shared understanding of a potential administration restructure here for Tipp City Schools. You know, I'm not going to make a recommendation tonight. I'm not going to, say this is where it needs to be, but just kind of want to have an understanding of what I'm looking at and how that may impact, and then later come up with an understanding of it. So again, we're just going to focus on the structure and how leadership roles are organized and how compensation is aligned with that. What questions might anybody have? Okay. So, when we have strong organizations that have operate clear, consistent compensation structures, helps everybody understand where they're at, why they're there, and understanding value too. That they're appreciated. It's not, well, we just decided, just threw a number out there and that's what we were willing to give you. So without that defined structure, the decisions become individualized over time, and then everybody, and you kind of see that right now. Right now, we're all kind of compressed into a small band for pretty much everybody, regardless of role, which I don't think is what anybody was looking for when it was first started out. So we want to, again, establish this as consistent, transparent, and disciplined, and we're about creating a framework that we can rely on, not just reacting to individual situations. So if you see on this, I kind of put the four different tiers for leadership. I have district leaderships, which would really be the principals, assistant leadership, which would be the assistant principals, instructional leadership would be the directors for curriculum, or for teaching and learning, and the student services, and then operational leadership, directors, responsible for technology, business operations, transportation, facilities, communications. And that's, again, are they all needed? Yes, everybody's needed. We don't operate without these people doing it. So there's not like one's more important than they're all important pieces. We need to have those. When you look at those four tiers, or those four, again, if you look on the back sheet, it's kind of put in a visual there. How does this reflect how does everybody see leadership in the district? Yes, Cindy.
Well, your organization is not the way I would organize it.
Yeah.
I would personally say district leadership would be a level, and then under district leadership would be instructional and operational. And then I would say the other column would be building leadership, principals, and assistant principals.
So it says district, you say building.
I'd say there is district leadership,
But replace the principals with building leadership, and then move district over to-
Instructional leadership is the entire district, operational leadership is the entire district.
Okay.
Whereas principals are building oriented. They're just really for their own building. I'm sorry, Aaron.
You're okay. Hurt my feelings. What about, besides the couple titles there, what about the alignments? And again, it's open to anybody.
And I just want to make sure from on the back, this doesn't mean that this person reports to this person.
No.
It just means
It's
that
just
they're,
in this, under the district, well, it's in the district operational leadership.
okay. I mean, I think the teaching and learning is a huge role because it impacts K through 12.
Yeah, they are all important in my mind.
But oftentimes I've seen the director of teaching and learning, director of curriculum and instruction, whatever it is called, but you know, I think that it holds an important role because it does impact. I just want to make sure that sometimes when I look at where our positions are, and I'm assuming we're talking about compensation, some of these operational and instructional positions get shortchanged because they're not in a building and they're not sometimes seen all of the time, but I don't want to shortchange the fact that they're critical for the entire district. So that's all I'm going to say.
Is there somebody that we know that's doing this well already, that has a great structure in place, and this is not sort of an unknown for them or anything that they have to tighten up?
Well, you'll see kind of, I'll hand this out here, kind of what other districts have and things like that, so you'll have an idea, but again, it's just a reference point. Everybody does it a little different, you know, the number of people depends on your size of district. You know, if you go to, Pickwood's a little bit bigger than us, they have, you know, 2 curriculum people, right? They have a K-5 or a K-6 and a 7-12 or 6-12. I think it's K-5 and 6-12. So everybody does it a little different. They may have those title changes. I think I'm looking at what are the needs here. And we'll go through that here as a reference point, just so everybody has it, but not we'll get to some numbers and some other districts have.
My point in asking is simply that I'm a big fan of not trying to reinvent the wheel. If there's somebody who's already invented the wheel and it's rolling really well for them, I like to learn from people like that and see if it's adaptable.
I would say every district's unique and has their own little twist on things and what they want to have, and based on size. I'm open to any of those. This is what makes sense to me, but that's why we're here. It has to make sense, not just to me, it needs to make sense to more people.
I see all the relationships to looking at big school systems. So I see, you know, the building principals have to work with every single one of these departments or areas. Instructional leadership has to work with technology, they have to work with business operations, they have to work with the director of communication, whereas the director of student services has to work with the director of transportation. And I mean, like, there's all these relationships I see that each department has to work. And then there are some things that they don't work directly with another department. Like the custodial, the director of custodial services is working with every building, but not necessarily working with the director of teaching and learning, except for when there's a need for some sort of, you know, facility kind of arrangement. Does that make sense? So I'm kind of looking at it, that's how I kind of look at all these different roles, and it's so important that everybody communicates together and works together. I got my Venn diagram going over here.
I think it's really hard, Kyle, to your point, in our area, and I agree with Aaron, our district is unique in Miami County. We're a different size, and just the makeup of our community, I think we don't really have anyone that we can necessarily compare to that's like our size of district. I mean, we can go bigger and smaller, but right here. And so I think we would have to go outside of the county. Once we do that, then support services change. So like connections with educational service centers, with outside support services, that changes in different counties, maybe how that they've adopted it. So I think that it is difficult. I mean, we can try to find happy mediums, But, I mean, there might be other districts around the state that are comparable, but I think in this immediate area, it's always been a little hard to compare, at least within Miami County, to find some.
I think
a
the other
district.
big piece is that Tip City is small enough that these director positions have huge
Oh, thank you.
responsibilities. When you get in any larger district, they have other people under them. The
Absolutely.
Director of Student Services has special ed supervisors, and they are in charge of certain schools, or they have technology coaches that are assigned to certain schools. Assistant treasurers. Even director of curriculum and learning, teaching and learning, they have probably instructional coaches or building coaches that, so Tip City is kind of unique because, you know, these directors are covering a lot of jobs and a lot of buildings, you know, covering all those extra positions that, you know, we certainly can't afford to have, you know, we're being stewards of our money. And so, you know, it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
The Director of Business Services in, you know, another district has, you know, full-time people that are working on certain things, whether it's, you know, purchasing things for the district or overseeing all the maintenance of the, you know, our Director of Business Services sees over everything.
So I guess I'm hearing that everybody sees value in the leadership and the positions. We may have different ideas on the naming of the tier, but the value is there. So I just share with you, just again, this is information from our conference. Again, just information. Again, this is not to set numbers. This is just awareness. This is just for an understanding of that. This is just context, and this again, this is our conference salaries that are again from, most of them are from 2023 or 2024. You see where they're at, and there can be some large discrepancies in those roles. Are there any that, when you look at these, are any that kind of jump out at you that the bands or things like that that might?
What are the highlighted ones signifying on this sheet?
No, I think they were just, that's just the way they were on, I know there's no significance, they were color coded, she copy pasted some things on that, so there's
Okay.
no, same thing. They came out and this was in color, but it was just to make sure some things were taken care of, so
Okay.
I wouldn't, the highlighted ones are not, there's no significance to that.
Gotcha.
Our Director of Technology that is an incredible discrepancy.
Agreed.
Wow.
So again, there's some big bands there, and I think, to me, the job is the job. I don't think the job should be some big $20,000-$30,000 pay difference. I think the band should be tight. I think the bands, you know, should be around $8,000 bands of what the job is. It doesn't matter what you came in with, you're still doing the job, right? The middle school principal is doing the job. The Director of Technology is doing the job of what that is. I think the job has its value, no matter what their experience is, maybe what their successes or had been. The job is the job, and I think that's why tight bands, then you place those people where they need on that band, so there's not these discrepancies on things. So it also, again, provides predictability for things, and obviously, as you look at these, there's, you know, even the elementary principals, you see there's a big gap between,
You don't have that paper.
So what do you do?
you should have, here.
Oh, here.
What do you do in the scenario, I'm trying to understand, you're saying the job is the job. What do you do in the scenario where, let's just say we have this $8,000 band for Director of Technology. Let's just take that for example.
Yep.
Are you saying that if we went out and hired a Director of Technology that was 5 years out of college, has all the appropriate degrees and certifications and everything, we would be saying, if we brought him in, but then we had the opportunity to also hire somebody who maybe has been at it for 25 years, and in terms of their knowledge and experience and insight, are miles ahead of where this other student is. Obviously, we would probably choose to hire the person with better experience, but are you saying if we decided to go with somebody that was younger, their headroom is only $8,000 from where we start them?
I think this, to begin with, I think it should be within a band, yes. I think the band is, this is what the job, we value this is what the job should be entailed. This is what we should be paying somebody. Essentially, again, I wouldn't want to pay them, if we say, hey, well, if you're a first year, we're only going to pay you X amount of dollars, then why would anybody, you know what I mean? Then are you going to get good people for that dollar amount?
Right.
I don't think that's the case. I think we say the value of this job is this amount, and again, we benchmark to whatever, but it needs to be, to me, tight. It needs to be predictable. It needs to be understood. And having big gaps, I mean, the guy with 25 years, is he working any harder than the guy with 5 years or the lady with 5 years? And I would say no, they still need to get the job done. And now if they're not be able to do the job, that's a different story, right?
Yeah. I think I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the value. It's almost taking the value away from the individual, which I think the individual can exponentially be more valuable than just the set of responsibilities that they do. I think that they can be a multiplier in a lot of different ways, some known, some unknown. But I think it's a concept that I don't know that I've seen before. So I think I'm struggling to wrap my brain around, because I think you can change everything with a single person in a lot of ways. I think the right person in the right position creates more value. So I think assigning the value just to the set of responsibilities is for me a little hard to understand whenever I think an individual can make a big difference. Even though they come in at the same level, here's the job. One person can do it at the bare minimum responsibilities and be adequate and satisfactory, and we have no problems with them. Another person can be an absolute superstar and do things for our district that have never been done before. And if we only have an $8,000 band, that person is likely, I think, if they're a high performer, I think they're likely to get frustrated and go shopping for somewhere else that's going to value them more. So that's the danger that I see maybe in keeping such tight bands.
I think I will use this example. If I have 2 elementary principals and I'm paying one X amount of dollars higher, why? Let's say the results are basically the same. But they came in and we said we were going to give you more because we think you're going to do this, but they're okay. I mean, they're doing what they need to do. Would you then I think that breeds some bad feelings in relationship too, when you're comparing people who are doing similar jobs, but they're getting more money than them as well. And you can always move the bands. I mean, I think the bands are always movable. And I also don't think certain things, and I'll just use principals, is the job of the high school principal more than the middle school principal, than more than the elementary principal? To me, yes, that is the case. What the high school principal deals with is exponentially bigger more than the middle school principal, than the elementary school. Are they both needed? Yes. Do we both want quality in all of them? Yes. But the jobs are different. And with the number of kids, the number of events, there's a lot of things that go on with that. And I think those need to be recognized too.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I see, and I'm just looking at the data, is that we're compared to our athletic conference, because ideally, we're clustered with schools that are supposed to be like us in size. And there are some gross discrepancies between compensation for some of these individuals. And I guess my question is, if the compensation is so different, how are we, if they're valued, how do we keep them here? And some of this I'm looking at like, why are you here? You know, I mean, so, there is, yeah.
There's a lot of variables in these salaries too, so that, you know, the workforce of education has been built from years and years of giving raises, not necessarily based on merit, but based on education and years of service. And that's historical. And so some of these salaries are based on 260 days contract. Some of them are based on a 216-day contract. Some of them are based on a master's plus 30, doctorate, master's plus 60. I mean, there are lots of variables in these salaries, and I can't agree with you more, Kyle. I think that it's individual, and a person needs to feel valued. They need to feel appreciated, and they need to feel motivated and have opportunities for growth. So it makes it difficult to put a window of with a dollar amount, because some people, personally, I'm not motivated by money personally. It doesn't motivate me. It has to be enjoyable for me. And I've taken a motivation survey, and it's more important to me for someone to come up to me personally and say, that was fantastic, that was so helpful. You know, I could care less about the dollars. I mean, that'd be nice, but, you know, personally, people are motivated different ways. But education has a history of trying to level the playing field with promoting people by their years of service. So you got 25 years, you're way up here on the pay scale, versus a newbie who might be fantastic with their job. And then also, the only way you got pay raises is you went back to school, you got your master's, or you took some credits to get plus 30, or. So we're dealing with a lot of old-fashioned
Archaic
methods.
And by your explanation, is there some of this that's out of our control? I mean,
No.
is it impossible for us to create a meritocracy, or is it impossible given that there are things negotiated by the union that we have to abide by?
Well, there's very few administrative unions. Tipp City doesn't have a union, negotiated, a bargaining unit for the admin. Larger districts sometimes do. But, and I don't know about any of these other districts, whether they have bargaining units for their admins.
I don't think so.
But that's usually only in much larger districts that they have a bargaining unit. So it's really based on whatever contract the individual secures with the district.
And that's your money's not, that's a true elementary person. They want to work with the kids. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
they get paid. It's not that they don't want to get paid, but that's a secondary piece besides working with kids, I think.
So the problem that you're trying to solve, Mr. Moran, is that you want to take as much arbitrary out of this as possible. You want to create something that is a little more solid, a little more predictable. People know when they come in, kind of where they're at and what they're going to be. And I can see the merit in that. I think there's value in that. I worry that we strip a little bit of that meritocracy idea out of this when we do. And to your point, I mean, you've said the bands can move or
Yeah.
whatever, but I know for me personally, if I was hired in to do a job and they said, this is what the pay rate's going to be, this is what the job is, and your room for growth is only $8,000, I'm like, I'm going to shop around probably a little bit. So I think that I think we're trying to walk a tightrope here in creating consistency and creating something that's a little more predictable But also, I think we have to include the element of like, if somebody's really worth more money, I think that has to be recognized too, either based on the value they've brought to another organization or experience they're going to bring in. Maybe they have a problem, a skill set to solve a particular problem we've had for, a couple of decades. And if we pigeonhole ourselves into these bands too tightly and we can't afford to hire that person, even though we know we need them, I just think we can create some pickles for ourselves.
Education is just, this is such a different animal.
Yeah, and I don't understand it in the way that I understand business or
Yeah.
corporate. I mean, I understand that pretty well.
Right.
This, I am speaking a little bit out of ignorance.
But I think oftentimes people try to compare it to corporate, and you can't.
Yeah.
Like, this is not how a corporate organization would be set up.
And then, Mr. Moran, how are you proposing setting up these bands? Do you have any metrics you're looking at to set?
Well, obviously, I think we want to look at our county and conference as a piece of it. I think that's, what is market rate? We do that with teacher contracts, right? We do that with classified, do that with all those. Where's the market at? And making sure that we're somewhere near the market, right? So we can not just attract people, but also keep them.
Okay.
Now, if somebody is, to Kyle's point, if I have an assistant principal, I'm betting, this is me, that they're not gonna be assistant principal for the rest of their life. I want them to get the experiences and grow them so they could be a principal, whether it's here or somewhere else. And that'd be the same for principals. If they wanna be in central office, if they wanna be a superintendent, they're growing in those ways so they can do that. I think those are all possibilities. And at the same time, if you say, hey, if I need to make more money, may not, be where you live too, right? If you live in Cincinnati, you're gonna get paid a lot more than you are here. Those are just cost of living and some facts. You have to make those decisions. I do think, though, the individuality, that's part of the problem that gets us in a bind. Is when, well, we say, hey, we gotta pay this, but we didn't do that to the other people, right? You're saying, we need you because you're really important, but the other people that are here, you're not as important. And I think that sends the wrong message. That's why this is what the job is. And again, it could be at 8,000, it could be 10,000, it could be whatever you want it to be. Pay them appropriately for the job, support them, and keep them here as long as, we want them to be here, really. I mean, we want stability here. We want some things happening, and that would provide that for them too, when they know that this is what it's gonna be and how they might progress. Because there are no steps like in teachers, right? That's set up. That's not part of what happens here, but how do we do that? And the bands can move, right? The bands can move depending on, if you gave a 2% raise, well, maybe the band moves 0.5% or 2% or whatever, some formula that's out there that we could put into place so the band moves and they can move as well. I think there's plenty of ways of doing it. But I want to get, I think the job is the job. And that is an important piece that needs to be, again, to take out that subjectivity piece and not playing, or could be conceived as it's playing favorites with people.
But where do other variables like days and responsibilities, where does that fall?
That would all have to be baked into the
The,
compensation.
okay.
So it would be a total compensation package band versus just salary?
I think all that needs to be taken into account, like number of days. All those things would have to be taken into consideration.
Okay.
This proposal makes the position you hold much more important in the future, because you can only accomplish this if you have somebody in place who's going to be hiring the best people for the job at that dollar amount. So I think by the way that it's being described, I don't disagree with it, but it makes the superintendent's position way more important, because you have to have somebody who's going to objectively hire the right people and put them in based on their qualifications and their merits at that dollar amount. So I trust this process now. I would trust this now. This would make the Board of Education and the decision for future superintendents much more important. This would be something that they would need to understand there's second and third order of effects here with a system like this, if we were to establish this, so. I don't know how you communicate to, whoever your successor is in 20 or 30 years, but, yeah, or whoever the board's gonna be, but you have to, you have to bake in the idea that you really have to have a lot of trust in your superintendent if you're gonna go to a model like this, in my opinion. I could be reading that wrong, but.
Well, and I would also say, just doing an apples-to-apples comparison, like Troy has 1,200 more students, so if we're just looking at their two salaries, I don't think that that's necessarily a fair comparison, because there are fewer students they're dealing with, so that's another component.
Yeah, there's obviously a bunch of pieces, number of assistant principals, all those things, layers of administration, how many, assistant superintendents are there that are doing multiple things. So all that needs to be looked at. And again, I don't think it's that a Tipp City has to be the highest of everybody around. I don't think that's the case at all. And we do need to be competitive.
Yeah.
We have some Vandalia Butler numbers for the school principals. We don't have Vandalia Butler numbers.
If you go, these are all broken down. We're gonna get more. These are the ones that you have right now. So all of these are different ones that we could verify. So this is like Vandalia Middle School.
So if we have Vandalia Butler, I don't know what the size
Those
difference,
are-
but they're functioning, and they've got 2 elementary schools, they've got
Yeah.
a middle school and a high school.
Yeah.
So from a
Number wise, yeah, all those things need to be looked into creating it.
Okay.
Again, the purpose of this is to understand and have a shared understanding. This is what I'm looking to do. This is what I'm thinking would help keep the people that we have here by making some adjustments, closing this gap and taking care of the people that are already here. And then in the future, if this is what, if somebody were to leave because they want to take take another step in their professional career somewhere else, then we have that in place to attract the right people. If somebody decides to move, then we have the ability to do those things. Life happens to everybody, but I think we need to make sure that we're set up correctly, and right now, I question a few of where we're at.
Katie, it was 19 years ago when I left Butler High School, but at that time it was a principal and then 3 assistants. I don't know what their numbers are now.
Do you have any data on what percentile we fall into as far as pay scale within either our conference or even the state? If not, that's fine.
No, I don't
okay.
have,
Okay.
they don't have, I'm not aware of that. Like, a lot of this is on that, you can go to Buckeye Institute and pull a lot of this off, where there's some other, Kristen was looking at another door that another website to get this, and we're gathering it from the actual districts to get the most up-to-date information. So, and that's, again, we know those districts, so we kind of understand their size.
Okay.
And how many, again, having 3 assistant principals or versus 1, or numbers can make a difference on that too. So again, I'm going to be looking at establishing a structure. Any changes obviously would have to be board approved. So that's not something that's going to happen right away. But this is so you have a shared understanding of what I'm looking at for that.
And again, I think it's important, just again, all the data,
And I'll send this
Days,
electronically. Again, this is just-
responsibilities potentially as
Yep.
well, so.
Hopefully we'll have more up-to-date information
Okay.
for everybody.
And if you could just look into a little bit, I'm looking at the implementation approach, the second bullet point, placement adjustments occurring through the annual process. Just
Yep.
kind of how you see that working, so that it wouldn't just be just a big hit for the district all at once, because that's kind of, I think, would be really concerning to the taxpayers too. So maybe like seeing an incremental implementation, and just
Yeah.
how you see that working.
So I think it, again, it's looking at the budget. It's looking at making sure that's not going to, negatively affect us, and how that would impact. All those numbers would come to you as well. So my recommendations would also come with, this is the impact to the budget, this is how
Okay.
it would, affect the forecast, or what other measures might be done to lessen it possibly.
Okay.
Do you have a timeline, Mr. Moran?
Probably in about next board meeting, I'll have a structure out to everybody by then.
Structure and bands?
Yes,
Okay.
compensation structure and salaries.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll just add, every year between May and June, we approve the cost of living adjustment for the staff. The teachers have a negotiated rate in their union contract, and we try to either follow that or closely follow it with the classified staff. And usually, the administrators will receive a percentage increase as well. As Mr. Moran stated, there are no steps for the administration like there are for classified and certified positions. We currently do kind of have, if you go back and look at the last salary schedules that were approved, we do have bands right now where they're set up on the jobs. Like the elementary principals are this, middle school principal is this, high school principal is this. I mean, we kind of have that in place now. I think maybe I'm wrong in this, but I think Mr. Moran's just trying to, instead of just doing like a 2% this fall, this spring
Right.
for next year's schedule, he's looking to correct something that may be completely underpaid right now. Would you say that's kind of?
Yeah,
I mean,
but there's some big gaps in those agreements too, right?
correct, yeah, so we already have bands right now. If you're an elementary principal with a bachelor's degree, this is where you would fall. If you have the master's plus 15 or master's, you're gonna fall here. We have those in place, and in the past, we've just been increasing those with the approved cost of living, and people have been falling within that. But there's not really been many opportunities where we've said, somebody's done a fantastic job, let's bump you up even more than just that COLA. So we've kind of just, if you were hired in at the low end of that scale, you've just been moving up on the low end. Every time it goes up, you've gone up at the low end, so.
Is there something built into that process then where, say, they haven't been bumped up sufficiently and now we retroactively make it so they get a substantial bump, and then say they start lagging in their performance again, instead of getting more and more bumps, that it's more reflective of performance?
It's up to whatever the board approves.
Okay.
A lot of the times, it's just been across the board pay increases at COLAs. There have been a couple times I can remember where there were some for people that had been here longer, that had been in frozen areas, where you had frozen steps back in the 2010s, and we bumped them up accordingly. Specifically, I think there were 3 positions. I believe one was the operations director. I think a couple principals as well that hadn't seen any movement, they saw movement. We have the ability to do individual items, but we've seen where we have just done
A blanket.
a blanket across the board. So, and you can go back and find those in board docs, and it's usually May, June, July.
Okay.
So, actually, I would say May, June, because they have to have the contract before July.
Now, has there been an updated, I have the salary range from 22, 23. Has there been an update to that?
Yeah, there should be one from last year in board docs.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Are there any performance incentives for meeting some of these goals? Like, we have a goal of getting to a certain number of stars. Or the teachers, no.
None at this
That's
time.
not
Okay.
part of it, no.
Okay.
Any additional questions, discussion, comments?
No.
All right. It's been great conversation this evening. With that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's working session.
A motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Ms. Plyman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, can you call the vote?
Plyman,
Yes?
Thompson,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes?
Ernst,
Yes.
McMurray.
Yes. And with that, the work session for March 23rd